Then we'll call it to order. I call the Board of Selectmen meeting for Hamilton for the 16th of February 2021. And we'll start with a roll call. For attendance purposes, we'll start with Bill.
Bill Olson here.
Jamie.
Jamie Knudsen here.
Darcy.
Darcy Dale here.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy here.
And myself, Sean Farrell here. All right, so we'll do a Pledge of Allegiance next. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Joe. All right, so we have a handful of board and committee openings. We have a Human Rights Commission openings, 5 of those. We have a forum coming up. Hamilton Historic District Commission, there's 2 openings. Zoning Board of Appeals, there's an opening. There may be 2. Community Preservation Committee opening, we'll be talking about tonight. Conservation Commission opening, Open Space Committee 2 openings, and Planning Board 2 openings. And now we have time for public comment on anything that is not already on the agenda. If anybody wishes to speak, please turn yourself on and announce who you are.
If I may?
Sure, please, Mark.
Mark Johnson, 6 Patton Drive, Hamilton. I am attending as president of Patton Homestead Inc., the nonprofit that helps the town with the Patton Homestead. It's kind of been a little bit of crazy time. We now understand that the license agreement that will be talked about later, perhaps, is signed or mostly signed. We do have concerns about it. We think that we can work them out with town manager. We hope we can work them out with town manager, and that town manager can work them out with Incubate. But they are seriously enough to suggest that there's a pause put on that agreement until we work out some of the issues. Some of them are just sloppy. Section A doesn't refer to Section B, sort of stuff that might have been picked up. But some of them are a little bit more substantive that might influence how the property is being used on behalf of the community. And once again, I don't think that's a big issue. I think it just the way it was written up, there are just some small changes that we have. Big picture, we think that it's time. So we understand completely the pressures that the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen and town manager have with respect to making the property be self-sustaining. We completely see, that the finances have been mostly transparent to the point where we can see the trends. We know what the pressures are, and we're not trying to deny those. We think that part of the problem has been we are not in fully agreement between all the different boards. The FinCom, Board of Selectmen, town manager, ourselves, maybe even the Conservation Commission in its own right. People have different ideas as to what they want to accomplish with this property. And we need to get on the same page, because as long as we're not on the same page, then each little piece is going to be pulling in its own direction and we're not going to be successful. So I'd like, we, Patton Homestead Inc., would like the Board of Selectmen to designate it, to have its chair, the chair of the FinCom, to meet with Joe, meet with Director Perret, meet with us, and hammer out a long-term vision and then back into how we can achieve that, rather than start with a business plan that says, what can we accomplish today? What can we accomplish tomorrow? And we run the risk of disappointing people or falling up short each way. So we really want to start with big picture and then work back. And we think that will help us all get and work in the same direction.
Thank you, sir. All right, anybody else public comment? All right. Let's see. And then we have department head report. We have Corinne Kale with us tonight, our town clerk, and she's going to give us a update on all things clerky.
We're getting feedback from Corinne, I think, somehow.
For me?
Somebody.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you're clear.
There seems to be feedback. Somebody
I'm
have two
not-
different sources open?
I'm not
Everybody
hearing any
just mute
feedback.
themselves except for Corinne will be okay, yeah, probably.
Well, I can hear it too.
All right. So if I start talking, is it clear or no?
It's clear to
Yeah.
me.
You're clear, yeah. You're the only one.
Great. I've got the whole stage. Fabulous. Good to see everybody. So I just want to go through several things that are going on right now. Obviously, the last several months have been very much focused on elections. So nice to move on to some other things. May 6th, I don't need to tell you, is the town election, and there are 11 different seats up for that election from the town of Hamilton. As a reminder to everybody out there, we are still looking for people to pull papers to express an interest in any of these positions. We have 2 positions on the Board of Selectmen. One person has pulled papers. Planning Board has 2 open seats. 2 people have pulled papers. The Assessor's Office has 1. Nobody has pulled yet. Library Trustees has 2. 1 person has pulled papers. Moderator Bill Bowler has pulled papers. School Committee has 2 seats, and the Housing Authority has 1. And I don't know yet if anybody's pulled for School Committee because they pull for that over at the school department. So signed papers are due back on March 18th. And then we begin to certify all of those and know exactly who will be on the ballot May 6th. So please continue to encourage your friends to consider some of these really, really important roles in our town. The other thing I'm working on are the town census that I know many of you, or most of you, or all of you received, and many of you have returned. So there's the census that comes back, and then there's the corresponding dog license applications that have come back. So 3,014 census forms went out, working hard on those. We had about 100 returned as undeliverable, which is one of my goals, is to really try to bring that down so the accuracy of our information in the system is better. Meetings with the Secretary of State's office, I walk away with a real nice highlight of the purpose of the census is to really know who lives at each address in town. So the assessor's office can tell you who owns property and how large it is, but not necessarily who lives there. So that's what's really kind of fun about the census, is really getting a handle on who lives there. And therefore, when Mary Beth needs information about age, number of people in age categories, or the schools need information, or Sean Timmons needs information for the pool, that is the source of that information. So if anybody's listening and they haven't returned their census form yet, please do. And please look at it very closely, including the number of dogs that are indicated on that form, so that we can all get much, much better data across the town. I think everyone, certainly on the Board of Selectmen, has gotten several emails from me recently about the conflict of interest in open meeting law acknowledgement requirements at this point in time. So those all went out. Lots of people are bringing them back in. Starting to collect them from all the employees and from about 130 members across 18 boards and committees. So there'll be a lot of paperwork coming back in, but I thank everybody for their help on that. I've also sent reminders to all elected officials, whether they were elected this year or any time in the past, about a January 20th campaign finance report deadline. Happy to report we're now at 85% compliant with the reports that have come back. I still have 4 that are overdue. So I think I'll send one more nice email out, because I certainly don't want to refer people to the Office of Campaign, Political and Finance. I don't think that's necessary. So you may be hearing from me again if you haven't gotten that in soon. You may have been reading about election law changes in the Commonwealth. So for COVID, as we know, there were lots of changes put into place to allow for vote by mail and to allow for voting in person early, which was expanded from what had been in the law previously. And now the Secretary of State, along with various teams of legislators, are interested in making those changes permanent. So vote by mail would be permanent for state and local elections. They would mandate the in-person early voting for both primaries and the general election. Prior to this year, there was not in-person early voting for the primary, and this year there was a 7-day requirement. Prior to this year, there was a 7-day requirement for the general election, which got expanded to 14 days, including 4 weekend days. It was quite an intense process. It's literally running an election 14 days in a row. You have to have your voter list updated in the morning. You have to have your poll workers there. At the end of the day, you have to submit the information in the electronic poll pads so that overnight the voter list can be updated. It was very, very intense, and it looks like it's going to be made permanent. And the other thing they're looking for is what's called same-day voter registration, which I still don't understand and have the details on yet. Like right now, you have to register 20 days before an election. They did change it to 10 this past year, but they want to change that to same day. So for us across the town, we just have to keep an eye on it because the changes are costly. You need that many more poll workers for all those activities, and you need the mailing costs, obviously. Fortunately, this past year, we were getting some reimbursements from the legislature. You might not have always been aware of that, but Marissa and I would get the emails about $1,100 for this, maybe $1,800 for that. So some money was coming back in to reimburse us, but there's no guarantee that it'll be there in the future. So we have to keep a close eye on that. So yeah, those changes are huge. I mean, I think the way I look at it and I've learned is traditionally an election had 2 swim lanes. You had election day and you had absentee ballots, which were just kind of not that many because you had to have a reason for an absentee ballot. So now we've got, you still have to have the election day, you still have the absentee ballots, but then there will be the vote by mail ballots as well as the in-person voting. So you're literally got four very major, 4 very complex swim lanes going at the same time. Not to mention for towns like ours in the fall, you then have a fall town meeting. And I'm still trying to figure out how you do that when they fall side. But, you guys were great to me last year, allowing the town meeting to wait until after the election. But got to figure out how you can do both at the same time. So those are some of the big events going on. I think many of you know that Mary Ann, my administrative assistant, left last week. Fortunately, I have my 2 wonderful senior volunteers, Charlotte and Ruth. I would have not made it through the elections. I would not make it right now without those 2 fabulous volunteers. And then one of my poll workers that I met this past fall, Anne, really, really enjoyed learning about elections and has also been volunteering here in the office to help through all this work. So there's a lot to get done. I'm grateful for them. And believe me, I would be remiss if I didn't take a minute to thank Sharon George, who was the interim town clerk, and Mary Ann, who came in during some, pretty intense times and really kept this office organized and kept the major tasks, got them completed and completed well. So on that note, that's it. That's the highlights of what's going on in my world. And as the election laws continue to be bantered around and changed, I'll be sure to keep y'all informed of that.
Thank you, Corinne. Was there any talk? I mean, I know you're kind of on the hub of clerk talks and discussions. There's some kind of back and forth where clerks call each other and stuff. Has there been any talk about the new voting regulations and lobbying the state for any type of funding to back up all this stuff? Because it was quite a costly thing to do for us this year.
Yeah, I think that's always the desire, is to get the reimbursement there. They try. It's not always that easy. I think, we'll all be working with our legislators for sure. I think, the other thing is there any room for compromise? I said to the clerks group today, I said, gee, for towns that have a fall town meeting, could we at least say that on that particular day, you don't have to have in-person early voting? But I don't know enough about the advocacy groups backing it all and whether or not they'll be up for any kind of compromise. But believe me, Sean, I'll keep an eye on it and I'll keep you up to date.
And most of the census forms that you had returned back, were they people not at that address or wrong address, or did it kind of vary amongst the bunch that you got back?
Thanks for asking, because it's absolutely mind blowing to me. In Wenham, they sent out about 1,000 forms. They only got 6 returned. We send out 3,000. We had over 100, and I think it's just it's a very weird, quite honestly, system. You know, if someone that comes back returned, you cannot just go in and start deleting people. You need a signature, or you need a significant amount of time before you can even delete them. So we're working really hard to even just Google people and try to see if we can get an updated address on some of these folks so that we can clean them out of the system. The other thing that sometimes happens is only, if 2 voters are in the same household and the census form comes back and says they moved and they give you the new address, you can only delete the voter who signed that form. The other voter, you can't delete them. You need to reach back out and contact them.
Gotcha.
So it's this vicious cycle of needing to track down the people so that you can get the right signatures. But the good news is we started sending out some of those follow-up letters last week, and then just today we got 2 back with the information we needed. So I think it's going to be a multi-year process to clean it up, but I'm pretty motivated to do everything I can to make sure we get a much cleaner database of who's living in our community.
Great. Any questions or comments from anybody on the board?
Other than just to thank Corinne for a great job that she's been doing. And I'm just very grateful.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice of you. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. Appreciate your friendliness in town hall. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Corinne.
No.
Thank you so much for joining
Thank you,
us.
guys.
Okay.
Appreciate the update.
So Sean, we skipped town selectmen and town manager
reports, yeah.
reports.
I realize that. Let's get the update from Kaylee, and then let's do our selectmen reports. That way she can leave if she needs to. How's that? That work with everybody?
Yep.
All right. So up next we have our Patent Homestead director, Kaylee, who's on, I think, somewhere in here, and she's going to give us a bit of an update tonight.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kaylee Perret. I am on my iPad, so I'm asking Joe if he can share the slides that I put together. I do have some pictures.
I'm trying to bring it up now.
So I've got some pictures and some updates. I'm also going to give an update about the FY22 budget because I can't make the meeting on Saturday with the rest of the department heads. So we've got a few different projects. If you go to the second slide, please. The first project I want to talk about is the PHI's Community Conversations. It's a virtual lecture series that they're putting on once a month. In January, they had about 60 people participate for an arts and culture themed lecture. Their next one is next week on February 24th, and the theme is open space. The next project is the private rentals that I have been trying to book. I can't say I've been totally successful, but the pandemic is definitely our biggest stumbling block on that. I've included the flyer that we've been promoting on social media for micro weddings. It's following a successful fall that Historic New England had in some of their historic properties to do ceremony and photo only, no reception, small weddings that were within the state guidelines of gathering restrictions and social distancing. So hopefully we can get a few of those for this spring that will bring in some revenue. I still have a few groups that had scheduled events during the spring and summer of 2020 that have rescheduled for 2021. So I've been in contact with those groups, and together we're working out how their events will be able to take place this year. Obviously the summer is still a little bit up in the air for group gatherings, but we're confident that we can find a way to move forward. The next project that we've been working on are the upgrades to the electrical and the lighting within the stables. This has been identified as our best facility for gathering. So for some of those weddings and reunions and other events, the carriage bay of the stables has been identified both by those of us in town, but also caterers and event managers as this is a great place. People want to get married in barns. They want to gather in rustic spaces. So our first step was to upgrade the electrical system and the lighting in there. We're working with Essex North Shore Tech. The students there are doing the work. They get to learn. We get to save a little money. It's a win-win. It's currently on pause. The weather has been very cold for them, even with some space heaters in that building. It's not heated. And then they also had a few COVID outbreaks within their group. So we've agreed that they're going to start again in the spring. My next biggest project has been the Incubate project. As Mark Johnson alluded to, we do have a licensing agreement between the town and Incubate. We know that there are some tweaking pieces that need to take place, but in general, the agreement gives Incubate exclusive access to the second and third floor of the historic house and non-exclusive access to parts of the first floor. The second and third floor are not ADA accessible, so we wanted to give access to a first floor for their usage, but not limit it to anything else that's happening in the house. Renovations are underway. The bathrooms have been redone. Painting is going on in all of the rooms. New lighting fixtures have been added in some of the spaces. Not all the rooms had lighting in them anyway. And we have an estimated opening for March 15th, and we are excited to have Incubated as a new partner in the space. They are a co-working company. So for anybody that doesn't have an office space to go to, or for any of those companies that have decided they are going to get rid of their downtown Boston office space, this is a great opportunity to still get a little bit of an office atmosphere, but not have to have your commute into Boston. So some of the photos they're all renderings. So they're not quite finished yet, but this is what they will look like. So you'll have access to desks and computers and printing and networking opportunities through Incubate. Anything that you would get from a big office setting, they can provide. And there will also be a couple private office spaces. So this picture here is from what one of the rooms on the third floor will look like, those private spaces. We have our Incubate has already secured a few new members for their group. So they run on a membership-based system. So their members pay anywhere from access to all 3 of their locations across the North Shore for access whenever they want, down to 1 day a week at one location. And so it's a broad spectrum of what their membership includes. And since announcing that Hamilton is their new location, they've already secured a number of new partners, and there are a few others that are very close to signing. We are excited that this will be consistent revenue coming in, and we won't have to be hustling for the next one-time event like a wedding. That will have a little bit more consistency. I'd like to thank Susan Shelby of Rhino PR. She's on the board of PHI, and she created a press release that was sent out to, I don't even know how many places it went, but it went out everywhere. And I included a few of the links of the websites that did feature the press release and announce to the business community around Greater Boston that this space will be available this spring for new members. And many of the people that have already expressed an interest or already signed up have said that they saw the press release, and that's how they reached out. Then moving forward, for 2022, we are not asking for money from the general fund this year. We plan to use money from the Patton Homestead Enterprise Fund to cover the operating expenses. There is, after the renovations are complete, there will be about $160,000 in the enterprise fund, and the operating budget for next year is set to be about $129,000. It's slightly larger than last year. We are anticipating that there will be, well, with increased usage of the property, there will be increased wear and tear. So things like utilities are going to go up, repairing and maintaining the buildings and grounds are going to go up. Right now, the middle part of the house is not used, so the heat is set to about 55 in the winter. We're expecting that that will be much warmer for people working in there. Custodial services have had a slight increase this year, and so a few others. But I'm happy to answer questions. I know I kind of went a little bit quickly, but thanks.
Thank you, Kaylee. Questions from the board or comments? I think a great presentation. I'm encouraged that we've got some revenue soon to be coming into the homestead with the rentals. And it looks like you've got a handful of people interested with Incubate as well. I mean, it looks like we've already got some people that are going to be moving in right away, but it looks like there may be some others that kind of will follow.
Yes, and we're excited that with Incubate on the property, it will have more people coming through the door on a regular basis, and they'll see the potential for usage of other parts of the property to use the Great Lawn for their events or inside the stables. So we're excited to kind of, not only does this get some action on a regular basis, but it also will create more action later on.
I think we could also share that Kaylee and I met last week with the executive director of the Wenham Museum, and she relayed to us that she has board approval to seek an extension of the current lease with the town for the portion of the building that's occupied by Wenham Museum, where they're managing the archives now. The archives now have been transferred in ownership over to the Wenham Museum officially, so they're seeking our continued partnership at least through at the end of FY22. So being an extension that is currently, that lease has expired, so we'd be signing an extension to take them from now through June 30th, 2022.
It's good to see so much interest before it's even open, so that's great. And then the other question I had was, do we get to see Joe, are we gonna get to see a copy of the license agreement? Does that need to go through the Board of Selectmen review, or if we sent that out yet?
It went through. I mean, we had it shared out, and then we had it to the FinCom already, and the FinCom made recommendations, and I made changes based on the FinCom's input.
I must have missed that meeting, so. Okay.
So we'll get it back out to you. But I know that Mark highlighted some concerns that he had, some issues he would like me to address. We have a very good working relationship with with Incubate, so I don't really anticipate much of a problem in addressing some of the concerns Mark highlighted in his conversation with me earlier today. So I think but we'll get you what we've got and understand that it may be amended. So.
Okay, I have a question. If you're all set, Bill?
Yeah, go ahead, Rosemary.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, how long is this agreement for with Incubate? I think I was told at one point, but I'd like just have my memory refreshed.
The term of the contract is for 3 years, but it has severability clauses so that if it's not working, Michael doesn't want to be tied to the property, and we don't want to be tied to keeping something open that's not working. So there's severability clauses that we've all agreed to as well. So it's the term of the contract's for 3 years, but it's got flexibility in it.
I have a question about the enterprise fund. What is the source of that fund? What are the sources of money?
The enterprise fund was set up when the town sold the Patton Ridge land, and it was separated out from the general fund to support the Patton homestead.
Okay. And how much is in the enterprise fund right now?
There's 196,000 right now, but we have not yet paid the bills for the renovations. So we'll be down to about 160,000 after that's done.
Okay. Now, as time goes on, you'll be adding to that value in the enterprise fund?
Yeah, all revenues that come in related to the patent homestead are deposited into the enterprise fund. So all the rent checks from Wenham Museum, anything that we split with with the incubate during this, all that stuff would go into the patent homestead
So does it
enterprise fund.
mean that it is self-sustaining at this point?
Well, I mean, I think that's a little bit too far to go. I think we have a plan to not take town money this year and support it with money that's there. And we have a plan to generate revenue in the coming year that we expect will continue to carry it without need for additional town sources in the future. But it's still just a concept and a contract, and we haven't proven it yet. We're cautiously optimistic. Let me just say that.
Good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions for Kaylee? All right. There was someone from the public that had a question. I'll let them ask it this time. I think it was Leandra.
Hi, Leandra DeFeo, 4 Sharon Road, Hamilton. I just have 2 questions. The first is, am I to understand that the Board of Selectmen have not yet seen this licensing agreement?
I know we've seen it.
They've seen it, and they've seen it in draft form, and it was commented on by FinCom. Technically, contract execution is the town manager's responsibility, particularly when in the enterprise fund. So I utilized the resources through the FinCom and town council to negotiate the agreement.
Yeah, we had time to look at it and comment on it if we felt we needed a change in it.
Okay. And my other question is, one of those slides mentioned potential partners and it listed Project Adventure. Are these potential partners for Incubate in the spaces that have been outlined in the licensing agreement, or are these additional partners for more spaces in the homestead?
The Incubate is the one that's making the potential partnership with Project Adventure. They're signing, or hopefully going to sign on as a member. And when and if they do, the licensing agreement will be amended to make sure that they have access to what they need while not tying our hands with other usage of the property. So we're waiting to get a little bit closer in those conversations before we make the amendments to the licensing agreement.
So they would be using a different part of the building in addition to what Incubate has already licensed.
Project Adventure is interested in using the Incubate office space, but they're also interested in usage of parts of the grounds. And so it would be the parts of the grounds that we need to amend on the licensing agreement to make sure that it doesn't affect any other activities that happen on the grounds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So
Anyone else?
that piques the question. What does this potential licensee want to use the grounds for? Project Adventure?
Project Adventure is an outdoor environmental education nonprofit, and they use outside spaces like access to the river, and they sometimes have non-permanent structures where they will have kids doing climbing in the trees. It's what they've done at some of their other locations. So I don't yet have the details about exactly what they want to do in Hamilton, but I hope that I will soon. But they do have strong relationships with the Hamilton Wenham School District, as well as other schools along the North Shore.
They're also currently operate some of their activities or programs at the Moraine Farm over in Beverly, not too far from here. So they've been working around the North Shore, I believe, for about 20 years or so.
John, if I may?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
With regard to Project Adventure, they have a great program. Very well received. Some of their stuff historically has been actually built up, and so there's been some structures that have been quasi-permanent. But in this case, it doesn't sound like that would be the case, which is great. I just wanted to tie in when you hear the Conservation Commission's discussion about the patent homestead later on, things like Project Adventure could be problematic, and how they interrelate and allow Kaylee to recognize revenue and for the community to use the space. We just want to sort of balance it all out, and the Conservation Commission having a role there is a little bit tricky. And I just wanted to call that out so that when you
Right.
hear the conservation piece, keep that in mind.
Thank
Right,
you.
that's why I was asking about that, because I know that the Conservation Commission is perhaps thinking about heading in a different direction, so. Okay,
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you so much, Kaylee, and good luck on Saturday with all your wedding stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's do the selectmen and town manager reports. We'll start with Bill, since he reminded me that I said.
So a couple things. One, just an update from Patrick Reffett on the cell phone tower, that the permit was obtained. They're scheduling for rebar, excavation, concrete over the next few weeks. We should expect the monopole sometime in March, and then Verizon will sort of go from there. So that's sort of the time frame between now and March, the foundation and excavation work, trenching work, and then Verizon will hopefully start in the spring. And we'll get an update further on the schedule once Verizon sort of commits. I don't know, Joe, you have any other update besides that Patrick has updated you since that last email?
No update since then. The permit was pulled. They paid for it. They're got their contractor in. The contractor's talking to National Grid about running the drop from Bay Road back so that the site can be energized. Their plan is mid-March or so, mid-March-ish to late March, weather dependent, to build the pad, the foundation for the pole, and go from there.
And then the other update, just from in terms of the school committee, we had a robust meeting last week that we were all on. So we've given them a very specific ask of cutting their budget so we get below the threshold for having to do any overrides, by giving them a very reasonable amount and options on how to do it. I did hear back as well on the question I asked about the Chapter 70 money. So we made a very clear commitment last year to the town that any monies over what they anticipated would be returned to the town, and how they see that happening is that it would that money would it's a sort of a year lag. So that money that's anticipated somewhere between 800,000 and $1 million would, and I'm paraphrasing here, but that would go to the FY23 budget and would help reduce that budget. But because of the year lag in terms of the assessing that overrun, it won't help this year's budget. It'll help next year's budget. So they did get back to me on that to make that clear. That, yeah, that is the plan, but it lags a year. So those are the two updates I have between the school and the planning board.
Thanks, Bill. And just to kind of piggyback on Bill's info about the cell phone tower, Joe, if we could, when kind of things get rolling back there and we get the monopole up, and I think a handful of updates over the course of that construction on our Facebook page and social media and whatever other outlets in our newsletter would be good, because it's been a pretty big hot button topic, and every probably few weeks or so someone asks the question, what's going on with it? So I think if we can be proactive in the kind of timeline for folks, that would be helpful. Rosie, you have anything tonight?
Just a couple of things from the Concom. Peter and Grail are removing invasive species on their land there. Their land is in conservation with the Greenbelt, and they're putting an incredible effort into removing invasive species. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I see that there's a Conservation Commission person here tonight, Lauren Lynch, and she was at the Conservation Commission meeting, the last meeting, and very exciting to have somebody who's so interested in conservation and has some nice experience that she will introduce her for herself. So I think that's all that I have for tonight. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Rosie. Darcy, anything to add tonight?
Just that we're working with Joe on his contract. We're going to bring some information to the BOS probably at the next meeting, I would imagine, unless there's a meeting beforehand. Other than that, I'm good.
All right, Jamie?
Yeah, a couple things. The Affordable Housing Trust met this last week, and we approved writing a commitment letter committing to provide $400,000 to toward the Habitat for Humanity project at 434 Asbury Street. And that was all, that's all been sort of discussed and everything in the past. So it's not like it was a brand new decision, but it shows that the project is going to be going forward. The town will have a mortgage on to secure that so that if anything happens, that gets in the way of the project, that we would get the money back secured by the real estate. And then actually, so sort of related to that, not totally related to that, but is I'm just mentioning it briefly. As everybody knows, kind of there, so I am on the Gordon Conwell Task Force, along with Joe and things, and or I should say serving Joe. And I just mention it because, I know we're all kind of waiting to see what happens there. And really, I don't have like a substantive update, but just want to keep mentioning that it does affect affordable housing. And we do discuss it from time to time at the Affordable Housing Trust, but also affects other things in town as well. And so just to say we are on it. We met with the Gordon Conwell Seminary folks in January, I believe. So again, not a ton substantively report, but just want to make sure it's on everybody's radar. And then the last thing is, as we've talked about, we have this related to the Human Rights Commission. We have this forum planned for this coming Tuesday, and we have kind of those who are planning it. We kind of have kind of a lineup and a format, but we haven't promoted it at all yet. And so it's a week away. So Joe, I don't know if you want to say more about that. So we've talked, there've been talking and some emails back and forth today about whether to postpone it a little further, just to give us more time to promote it, because I don't know, with it being school vacation week and things, whether people are going to be paying it. So I just bring that up. I don't know what we need to decide anything tonight, or we do need to weigh in if people have strong opinions. So
if I just, because Jamie asked, I'll just to support what he said. Jamie and Rosie have been working with Russ Stevens and Mary Beth Lawton and myself on kind of developing the format and the agenda and the timing of it. Unfortunately, we didn't get some of our commitments for speakers until kind of mid-late last week. And I was kind of loath to start promoting something that we didn't have kind of set. Now, though, we're in the situation where we have it set, but we've got everybody we've talked to about the date for the 23rd. So Jamie and Rosie and Russ and Mary Beth all kind of agree that it might be better to push it out a week or two. But if I could ask if the board wants to do that, if you could quickly discuss that, and then maybe give Jamie and Rosie the right to kind of pick the date, as long as we can get all of our, because I get 3 other speakers we have to line up and make sure they're all available at the same time as well. So if we pick a date now and then one of them isn't available, then that kind of throws off the program again. So if I could make that recommendation, but you want to move it out a little bit, that's the board's conversation.
I guess a follow-up question to that, Joe, Jamie, and Rosie, how are we going to promote the forum other than talking about it right now and at other meetings? I'm going to assume we're going to put out a Facebook notice, but do we have any other types of outreach planned?
I was planning to use the electronic signboard and the school department's email list that the school department had expressed to me that they'd be willing to help us spread the word about that forum when it came together. So okay. Once we have it set in a date and we know everybody's available, we'll utilize that. So it'll go to even more households than just the town's email list.
Perfect. So do we want to do kind of a quick, just a discussion and then we can leave it up to Rosie and Jamie maybe to kind of figure out the details and let them figure out what's best with it? How do we feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I trust Jamie and Rosie do the right thing on this thing. So if they think pushing out is going to be better for them, then let's push it out. So yes, I give the thumbs up to letting them make the decision on what the best thing to do is.
Okay, and I assume there's, more moving parts than just Rosie and Jamie changing the date. You're going to have to reach out to your speakers and everybody, make sure everybody gets back on the same page again.
Yeah, that's the only challenge, right? So
Right. All right, I think we'll leave it to you guys to work on a reschedule, and then let us know if we can do anything to help you promote it other than talking to my neighbor over the fence or something like that. All right. Jamie, was that it? Or did you have anything else to add?
That's it.
All right.
Actually, I mean, just, again, I think, it's maybe Joe and his town manager report will cover the vaccinations and everything, but great job to the folks who are doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention that, and I'll let Joe mention it too, but we've done quite a few of them. I think and I'll let Joe confirm, I think we're ready to move on to our 65-year-olds. I think we've gotten most of our 75-year-olds. I think there's a handful left that we're trying to get in. But to Joe's, what am I looking for? The word is good work that we've partnered with a few other organizations and towns to get a bigger kind of a coordinated effort, which I think has been successful for not just us, but some of the other communities involved. I really only have kind of two things to update tonight, and they're kind of the same thing. The CPC meeting we had last week in the rec department. My two kind of liaisons kind of came together, and the rec department has already gotten a grant approved for eligibility, and then we approved their funding grant to bring a ask of a grant for, I think it's going to be about $28,000 or $30,000 from CPC to fix the tennis courts at Patton Park. Some substantial cracks on the court, and the court sees a lot of use, not just for tennis, but for all the pickleballers out there. It's quite numerous. I think we have more pickleballers than tennis people. But it's going to probably take about if the grant goes through, it'd take maybe 3 to 5 days to fix the cracks in the court. It seems like a lot of money, but they're actually doing the kind of a really high-tech thing where they kind of dig out the crack and lay in new material and then repaint the whole surface so it looks like brand new. So it's much needed, and it's something that's not a maintenance thing. It's more of a capital cost, is why the CPC can cover it. And that's all I have. Joe?
He's on mute.
I got me. Okay, thank you. All right, I'll give some high points from my town manager report. Just a reminder to everybody that the FY22 budget capital presentation is this Saturday, February 20th, beginning at 9 a.m. via Zoom. We'll post the meeting notice and the Zoom link on the town website tomorrow. Just to give you a couple numbers about vaccination so far. Over the past several weeks, the Health Department, Fire Department, Council on Aging have worked together to vaccinate more than 687 Hamilton residents through at-home vaccinations, local vaccination clinics, and a partnership with Conley's Pharmacy in Ipswich. This past Sunday, for instance, they did 507. And the town has been notified that we will be given more vaccine again to run out of the local clinic, likely this coming Sunday, February 21st. Details on that clinic will be shared on the town website and via Facebook tomorrow. Seniors who qualify would be able to call 978-717-3700. That number will also be on the website to get assistance in registering for this next clinic. That's a new resource. That 978-717-3700 is a volunteer staffed hotline that will help people register. I wanted to let you know that we've submitted for a regional pilot grant this week through the Mass Office of Business Development. The grant application was submitted in partnership with the Town of Wenham, the Hamilton Development Corporation, and Shop Local, and it seeks funds to launch a multimedia marketing campaign for the downtown business district. HDC board member Rick Mitchell and the Shop Local folks were a big help in pulling together the details of that grant application. As you know, we have an opening in our finance director position. The town has initiated its search for a new finance director. An updated job description has been provided to the search consultant, and they are working now to attract candidates and promote the opening. We're hoping that it'll be advertised for about 2 or 3 weeks or so, and then we'll be using a local screening committee to interview candidates put forward by the consultant. Marissa left us in very good shape, though. The draft FY22 budget and capital plans are nearly complete. I'll be working with Diane Katz in the accounting office and Patrick in my office to complete that this week. I also wanted to pass on from Patrick Reffett that the parking study that is being done with Nelson Nygaard, the consultant they've done most of their preliminary work. They've evaluated the available space in the downtown district, and they're preparing some early thoughts that they'll be reviewing with the public at a meeting that will be held on Wednesday, February 24th at 2 p.m. via Zoom. So we'll make sure that that information is also public. And last thing I'll mention is the RFP for planning consultant has been released. It will be distributed on the Goods and Services Bulletin next week, the 22nd. The plan is also to post this for 3 weeks and have a mid-March response opening. The procurement process is outlined in state law will be handled in-house with vendors being rated against the selection criteria that were part of the RFP. Our goal is to have the consultant on board by late April. And that's all I've got on my town manager report.
Joe, can you please confirm if the vaccines are for age 65 and older or 75 and older?
Right now, the state is still saying 75 or older, and I think that has to do with where state numbers are at. But we're going to seek some guidance from the state to see what we can do. A lot of our 75 and older folks in Hamilton have been taken care of.
Yeah.
So we feel good about that. We think that 687 represents the vast majority of those folks. So we're hoping that the state will be a little give us a little leeway. But we are partnering with other towns. So Topsfield, Middleton, Wenham are all towns that we've been working together collaboratively with since we started being able to give vaccine back to the first responders back in December and January. And so as a result of that, there may be days when, like, for instance, Topsfield got a vaccine last week and we didn't. They had extra doses, so they offered to give them to us. We didn't need them, but they offered to give them to us. We may be in a space this week where the 100 doses we get might not all go to Hamilton residents because we're working with our partners to lay it out in the right way, the way the state wants us to. So if we only can use 60 of our doses here locally, we'll talk to our other towns that we've been partnering with and share back and forth to make sure that everybody gets treated in the order that the state wants the vaccine to be rolled out in. So,
Thank you.
And I'll just add just a couple more things about the CPC meeting that I forgot that we had. I guess we bring it up periodically about a 3% surcharge, and there was some talk with the Town Hall Building Committee about a potential move to raise the surcharge to 3%. And at the CPC meeting, we've talked about it before, and I think right now the average home value in Hamilton is about 690,000. And that would be, I'm going to get my numbers messed up, but I think it's about a $60 increase or $90 increase in their taxes for the surcharge at that level of home cost. But what that would do is it would make our CPC funding go from about $420,000 a year to about $800,000 a year with the state match. So it would almost double it. But there's a lot of kind of moving parts there. It would have to be a citizen's petition. And in order for it to be, let's say someone really was go get them and put a citizen petition in for a 3% surcharge increase, and it did pass at town meeting in the spring, that it would still be a year before we're able to access those funds because the state wants you to collect a whole year at that surcharge before they're going to do the match. So it wouldn't be an immediate flip the switch type of thing. And CPC, we kind of thought it would be great if we had thought of it a year and a half or 2 years ago. And plus with the current climate with job loss and evictions and COVID, et cetera, we just didn't think it would be prudent, even though we all agree that it would be a great thing to help us with some of these bigger projects, especially like I think Town Hall is kind of the poster child for an increase in surcharge because we could almost cover, if not cover, the whole cost for Town Hall instead of having to go into the general fund and raise the taxes for it out of citizens. I mean, we're still surcharging a 1% increase, but it would impact the tax rate a lot less because we're getting that doubled state match in the funding. So just a kind of FYI. And also, I didn't see it on this agenda, and I apologize to Rick Johansson, who's here with us tonight, but the CPC approved him or endorsed him as a new at-large member. And Joe, maybe you can help clarify that. And if we could, I'd like
we amended the agenda on Friday morning. So we posted the agenda timely fashion on Wednesday, but we amended the agenda after the CPC vote Thursday night and included his information in a subsequent follow-up email to the board. So you should have Rick's application and endorsement. Well, you may not have a letter of endorsement from the CPC because I don't think the CPC had an opportunity to write that up yet, but Rick is here and you've explained what happened at CPC meeting on Thursday. So if the board wants to take that, if the board wants to take that vote up tonight, it is on the amended agenda for this evening.
Oh, perfect. I didn't see it on mine, so perfect. Okay. So without kind of further ado, we'll move on to the agenda, and we have a couple of those things right off the bat here. Let me just find my agenda. We have first off, approve the minutes of the January 4th, 2021 Selectmen meeting.
I move that we approve the, what is it? The minutes
January
of
4th.
January 4th, 2021.
January 4th. All right, second,
I second that.
anybody? All right, all those in favor, we'll do a quick roll call. We'll start with Bill.
William Olson, aye.
Rosie,
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Darcy,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Jamie,
Jamie Knutson, aye.
and myself, Sean Farrell, aye. And then let's start with Rick's appointment to the CPC. And I'll let Rick turn his mic on and just introduce himself to everybody if you haven't had a chance to reach out to Rick.
Okay, how's everyone doing? Thanks, I appreciate it. Thanks for everything you guys do for the town. And it was fun to listen in on the first CPC call. I learned a lot. I didn't realize how much scope the committee has, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
All right, anybody, any comments or questions for Rick? He held his weight, he sat through the whole meeting, and I think he's going to be a good addition to it.
So Rick, this is Rosie Kennedy. Hello.
How you doing?
Thank you for stepping up. It's so important and so very welcome. Rick, I just wanted to double check with you that you believe you are applying for the right position. When I looked at your letter of interest, you talked about conservation and preservation, and I'm wondering if you had just looked at the Conservation Commission. The CPC is has a sort of a financial track that's a little bit different than straight conservation. Now, of course, the choice is yours. I just wanted to just bring it up because the question was raised in my reading.
Of course.
She's recruiting here.
Oh, right. Yeah. I wish I could. I
on different
am a
nights. You
recruiter
can do
by
both,
trade, and I appreciate it. Actually, but the first time I talked to Jay Butler, he really filled me in. So I didn't realize the depth and the scope, and I am interested in the financial aspect.
Okay.
I would, for the future, I'd like to become a well-rounded resident of the town. So maybe after my run in the CPC, if I'm appointed, I could come over to conservation.
Yeah.
Well, Rosie, just so you don't feel left out, there is a candidate to be appointed to the Concom tonight as well. So
Right. No, I did. I did meet her on our last Zoom. But Rick, welcome and thank you so much for joining public service. Where you're very, very welcome.
Oh, thanks for everything you guys do, and I'm happy. Thank you.
Yeah, whatever we can do to help you out. So thank you for volunteering.
Yeah, I just want to echo what everybody else has said. It's thank you so much for stepping up. That's great.
All right,
I'm a fellow architect, so I have an architect too, so we got my vote.
Awesome.
No bias, right? All right, so let's do a quick endorsement here, Rick, and then make them official. And then Rick, you just have to go into the town clerk's office at some point after you've been kind of confirmed and get sworn in, and you're good to go.
Okay.
All right, so all those in favor of Rick Johansson joining the CPC as an at-large member, we'll say aye. We'll start with Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Darcy,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Bill,
William Olson, aye.
Jamie,
Jamie Knutson, I have a question though. And so just
question away.
parliamentary question. Did we need a motion?
I was going to ask the same thing, so I'm glad Jamie
Yeah.
did. I
Oh,
didn't
we
catch.
didn't do it?
No, you introduced Rick, and then we forgot to have
We
somebody
forgot the motion.
make a motion. So we need a motion in a second to follow up to coincide with that 5-person unanimous vote.
May I make the motion
Yes, please.
that we approve Rick Johansson as the newest member of the CPC?
Second,
All right, and we've done a few of these. So, Jamie, would you like to vote now?
Jamie Knutson, I.
And myself, Sean Farrell, aye. Thank you, and we'll see you every Thursday of the month there, Rick. All right, and then up next we have our conservation
Lauren Lynch.
commission opening for Lauren Lynch, and Lauren is with us tonight. Hi, Lauren. Nice to meet you.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you also. Yeah, Rosie and I had the chance to meet, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I apologize if you hear any noise. My 1-year-old is walking around in the background.
No problem.
But yeah, so I'm Lauren. I grew up in Ipswich, but left after college. And for about the past 10 years, I've been working primarily in international conservation work with the Peace Corps, with the Nature Conservancy, and the World Wildlife Fund. So kind of an interesting relation to Rick's comment about being intrigued by the finance side of things. Most recently, I've been working on sustainable finance. So what attracted me to the Conservation Commission was to kind of get away from the finance side a little bit and more hands-on. So maybe we can switch in a couple of years.
There you go.
But yeah, so I was able to join 2 calls so far for the Conservation Commission, and I was able to join them on a site walk earlier this week, which was a great chance to actually meet them in person, albeit at a distance. So that was nice. So yeah, I'm excited about kind of getting my hands dirty and doing a little bit more work locally.
Great. Any questions for Lauren from the board or comments?
Her resume is very impressive. So
Yes.
I have,
Sounds perfect for the job
and a beautiful resume too. So well done.
visually.
All right. If there's no comments or questions for her, I'll entertain a motion before I call a vote today.
I move that we that we vote to approve Lauren Lynch for the Conservation Commission as the newest member.
second,
All right. In a roll call vote, we'll start with Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye, and welcome, Lauren.
Darcy,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Jamie,
Jamie Knutson, I.
Bill,
William Olson, aye, and thank you for volunteering.
yeah, and myself, Sean Farrell. I thank you to both of you for volunteering your time.
That's very
We look
exciting.
forward to hearing more from you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Then up next, we have our audit management letter. Our audit is completed. And as we kind of do, we have, and I'm going to forget his name, but from Clifton Larson Associates come and give us the kind of overview of the management letter and the recommendations that they have. Anything I'm missing there, Joe?
No, that's it. We just wanted to make sure the board had it with enough time to review it, and then we'll schedule Clifton Larson Allen, Jim is his first name, to come in and Jim in and make a kind of exit interview with you about the findings in the report. So just wanted to make sure you had it and you were aware of it.
Is there any questions that anybody has on that while we're on the topic?
I briefly went over it, and it looks like it's usually the same culprits year after year, that it's the cash receipt, the best way to handle them, and cybersecurity issues for to make sure we don't get stuck in any ransomware situation. But
Right.
other than that, it's usually.
No, I feel it's always a very clean management letter that we
Yes.
get. We've done really well with town manager and our financial directors and everybody else kind of doing what we've asked of them and what they're supposed to be doing. And it's Clifton Larson's job to give us some recommendations. So they have to ding us for something. So, those are kind of minor infractions in my mind that it's tough for us to kind of manage some of those smaller details being a small town and the way we run things. So overall, very good management letter. All right, up next, we have the amended ISD IMA. That's the inspectional services intermunicipal agreement review and discussion.
Yeah, so as you know, the two boards voted in a joint session with the town of Wenham's Board of Selectmen, when they actually had a full Board of Selectmen, to have the towns continue in the inspectional services arrangement, the shared inspectional services arrangement, but to amend the ISD to have Hamilton take the lead and to reclassify the job for the lead position from building inspector to building commissioner. So what you have in front of you is a document that does that. It's for your opportunity to review it and ask questions and poke holes in it and having made changes or whatnot. The Wenham board won't be able to vote currently because they don't have enough board. They won't be able to vote until at least after their April special election. But the town administrator there, the active town administrator there, and the sitting board selectman member have it. The current agreement holds through the end of June, and because you had to vote, both boards had to vote before January 15th to continue the agreement. So you've voted to continue the agreement. So at this point, when we approve the actual language of the agreement is not necessarily the driving force here. Both towns have had a vote of their Board of Selectmen. We've both set our budgets based on the shared arrangement. So when you decide to adopt the language or amend it and move on, can happen as late as, as long as it happens before June 30th. That's not the main issue, but we wanted you to have plenty of time to look it over and give us your thoughts and feedback.
Joe, will KP Law be reviewing this as well at some point?
We can have them, but they drafted the original agreement. Basically, we just took out we took out parts and put in some other parts. Okay. And I mean, it's really the same agreement.
Yeah, that was my question, Joe. It wasn't modified too much, right? You just took out took out the parts you're referring to and changed them to
and then change the
Hamilton and job description.
And job description.
And it's just modification. Just
there was no major overhaul other than the shift in the who's running it, basically.
And George, out of curiosity, how many of these positions are currently open right now versus filled?
Well, technically, they're all filled. The current building inspector has actually last Thursday or Friday, gave his notice. He's going to be moving on. He was accepted a similar position as building inspector in the town of Georgetown. That was one position we were definitely going to have to re-advertise because it's a different job description, and where we're going to become the hiring agent as opposed to when we would have to re-advertise that anyway. So that doesn't really change our thinking that much with regards to that. The other electrical inspector and plumbing inspector are part-time positions, they're stipend positions. They'll be brought in to meet with us, but I don't necessarily anticipate any changes there unless they want to make a change. We'll have them in, interview them, talk to them, and just make sure everything's going to continue to work fine. So.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Up next, we have finalize the town manager evaluation and review the department head surveys. And I just sent you guys, apologize I didn't send it sooner, the compiled review and the summary of the reviews. And I'm also, did you guys get a copy of the employee survey yet?
I haven't.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Completed or just the employee survey, the document or the response?
Response.
The response.
So response was sent out, but I had a couple questions on it, so it's not included in this right now because I was on the scoring that you and I talked about, Sean. But let's just talk about the first part. So So thank everybody. So it was a lot of time, a lot of effort to go through all the questions and responses. Everybody gave very thoughtful answers. So Sean sort of walked me through the process, but so Joe will sort of get three things as a report. He'll get everybody's individual report. And I think Sean will just have to make sure that's how we're going to do it. We're going to send everybody's individual reports. But what I did is I compiled all of them a line by line basis to sort of take out some redundancy, add comments. And so I compiled everything to a 3-page summary. And then I just did a 1-page executive summary that sort of dialed it up to the individual items. So what Joe will see from us is a 1-page executive summary, a line by line collection of all of our comments. And then Sean, you'll tell me if we send in each our individual.
Yes, and to Bill's send a statement there. I have all of the reviews that you guys have sent to me that I gave to Bill to compile. So if you would like, I can send them to Joe, or if you want to individually send them to Joe and meet with him on some kind of a follow-up or anything like that, you can let me know too. Whatever you guys feel is best. I can forward them on if you don't mind, or if you want to do it individually, just let me know.
And I don't know if you want me to give sort of a summary of
Yeah.
of what we did, John.
Yeah, I would say we'll probably go over the executives summary tonight.
Okay. I don't know if you want to share a screen.
Yeah, if we can share the screen.
Do you want to send it to Joe and have him pull it up on his screen and I'll walk through it?
He should have it. I just sent it to everybody. You want me to bring it up, Joe?
I gotta just go into my email. Hold on.
So while he's bringing it up, so we reviewed eight topics for his review. We tried to be pretty specific so we could get some good comments out. So the eight, I'm waiting to pull it up here, but the eight sections were general management and communication. Number 2 was personnel management. Oh, there you go.
Can we enlarge it?
No. Yeah, Joe, can you bring it up a little bit?
Word.
Maybe a little lower than that, maybe 125. See what that does. Okay, I can scan side to side on what you need.
Okay, so general management and communication, personnel management, financial management, planning. Number 5 was interorganizational cooperation. 6 was professional growth and goals. 7 was community outreach, and then 8 was the priority goals for fiscal 2020-21, which is sort of the projects that we have in town. I think on a general basis that Joe is meeting or exceeding our goals and expectations. I think the 2 that were highlighted that he does really well in their view was he with the COVID impacts and sort of shifting the town and sort of making use of CARES Act and town meeting and just sort of how he handled the pandemic and sort of able to sort of not skip a beat in the town to continue on. And the other one was just sort of his open door. Joe likes to keep an open door, open communication, likes to try and build lines of communication amongst all people. On the things that sort of needed improvement work on, we sort of continue that communication, just sort of balanced communication, outreach to community, timely communication. So we're going to work with Joe on social media, communication tree, things like that. So I think amongst all these 8 items, I think communication kept coming up as something that we could work better at as a town, and looking for Joe's leadership to help us at. I think also some of the personnel management, there's some comments on that about just some better leadership, better direction, and then sort of trying to balance the COVID work from home policy and sort of not having everybody, at town hall at the same time becomes hard to manage people. So hopefully as we get into 2021, we get more people back into town hall safely, and it'll be easier to sort of have, when you're in the same room with somebody, easier to manage them and help them develop and grow. But yeah, and I think just financial management was very strong across the board, fiscally responsible, works hard on the budget, makes tough decisions to cut the budget. I don't know if people have any questions. Obviously you guys can look at, it's a lot of work, a lot of information compiled. But I think everybody's very, very, very pleased with Joe and what he's doing. And I think constructive criticism of what you can work on over the next year.
I'd say give tonight I just want to kind of introduce it and just talk briefly about the executive summary, and then maybe at this point I'll ask again, and you can tell me if you want me to send your individual review to Joe or if you want to send it to him. So anybody have a preference?
You can send mine.
Okay.
You can send mine.
I'm not fussy, whatever works best.
All right, so I'll forward everybody's reviews on to Joe, or maybe Bill. Can you do that since I never got a copy of your review?
Yep. Yeah, I'll send it. I'll send it out. I have everybody. So.
And then I encourage you all to, once you've kind of read it through and digested all of it, to make some type of a follow-up talk with Joe, just to disseminate some information and see some of the strategies he has on some of the areas that might need some improvement.
Mm.
and kind of what his plan is once he's kind of read it through, and give him some time to digest it as well. And then he can come back to us and give us some plans for some of those things that's improvement. That sound good to everybody?
Yeah, you froze up a little bit, Sean, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But
Sound good to you?
yeah. Sean, why don't you turn your camera off for a second? You're having some connectivity issues. But I would say too
I
that
was just
you know,
saying,
I think we
it's
heard
okay, just saying give Joe some time to digest it as well.
Mhm.
yeah, what I would recommend doing, because obviously it's
Did everybody catch that, or am I still frozen?
Well,
We can hear you.
we can hear you, but your picture's frozen. But what I would suggest everybody do is look at it. Everybody put a lot of work into it. We want to get it right. So if there's any comments or changes, we should sort of do it like meeting minutes, where we should look at it over the next 2 weeks, and then in 2 weeks we should vote on it and put it into the record. So if you have any comments or
Okay.
changes within the next 2 weeks, send it to me. Give me at least a day before the meeting to make any edits, so that next meeting we can vote on it and put it into the record. And it's not a final copy; it's a work in progress up until then. So please send me any
Okay.
anything I maybe misunderstood from your reviews or didn't compile correctly. And then we also in that time we also send out the staff reviews. The staff did a great job of coming up with constructive comments too, and we'll circulate that to everybody.
All right. Hopefully can everybody hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you
Yes.
fine.
All right, perfect. I shut my camera off.
And the
sometimes.
only thing, Sean, I'd asked for was I'd asked for Joe to do a self review as well too. So I don't know if Joe had a chance to do that, but
I had started, didn't I share you with you? I got
Joe shared.
most of it.
Joe shared one with us, but Joe, I'd also encourage you. I think that was great. We got that a while ago. I think when we first started the process, Joe sent that out to all of us. But I think before we have our next kind of follow up to Bill's point about accepting into the record and all that kind of stuff, give Joe a little bit of time to go through it and see if he wants to make any kind of changes or recommendations, et cetera, that kind of improve on some of those things that we and he think needs a little bit more work.
So you want me to redo my self-evaluation with reference to the comments that I get? That's fine. I can do
Yeah,
that.
I think that'd be good. I think that'd be helpful. Because then we can help kind of formulate how we can help you too. You know, like I think one of the big ones that was communication. You know, there were some deficits that, and a lot of that's not directly your fault. It's funding and website and stuff like that. So, you know, that would help us help you to kind of bring something to FinCom and our budget meeting, some improvements in that.
Okay.
All right. Let's see what's next. We have review the proposed schedule for 2/20/21, the joint Board of Selectmen FinCom meeting for budget presentation. Joe, do you have any suggestions for this? I know we usually kind of, sometimes we choose at the meeting, but we kind of have a general discussion and then the department heads make their cases if they're there, but we're doing a little bit different this year. So I see we have capital presentation by you, general discussions, public safety, and then DPW, Public Works, and then our health planning inspections, rec, council on aging, town clerk, and then general and finance.
So this was just a rough outline. One of the things that I'd seen done in some, excuse the typos in this, I thought I actually corrected this. I don't know why it didn't correct earlier. One of the things that I've seen done in some other towns where they have all the department heads come in, sometimes they try to schedule their time in because that's can be a big block of time on a Saturday to ask everybody to just sit there. So the idea here, and you can make changes to this. This is just a draft. There's just a suggestion, but the idea would be to have the main presentation up front, answer questions from you in the FinCom, and then have the department heads have scheduled kind of time blocks where they could be asked questions about their particular department. So, according to this, for instance, it would be at 9:45. The two chiefs would be in available to take questions from either or both FinCom and Board of Selectmen. And when you were done with them, we'd move on to Public Works, et cetera. So, just a thought.
Does that work for people? I know, Darcy, you've kind of been on both sides of the fence, and you've got a little bit of institutional knowledge, as do I, about kind of how these Saturday meetings have worked with the budget. do you think that this is too constrained, or do you think it works? I'm just, my only worry is that, we have one question for health planning inspections and 100 questions for recreation, and then we get off track, and then people are waiting. And we've done sometimes in the past where we've had kind of all the department heads kind of go, not at once, but all in the beginning, and then we kind of let them go. It's really up to you guys, but I don't know, Darcy, any thoughts on it?
I think the way it looks is fine. Like you said, the trouble is keeping everybody to 15 minutes. But maybe we should have a timer or something so they can they can look at the clock while they're speaking. But
Joe's got that countdown clock from
yeah,
town
there
meeting.
you go. We could do that. It is what it is, because there are certain things that are affecting us at different times. So we might find, like you said, the recreation getting many more questions than maybe the town clerk or something like that. But that's just the way, we'll have to roll with it, I guess.
Right. And the other thing we could do, if we kind of adopt this schedule here, that if we are kind of having downtime in between, like say we only talk for 5 minutes about health planning inspections, then we've got to kind of wait, 10, 15 minutes before recreation, that we visit some other questions that people kind of come, because usually when I come into the meeting, I've gone through the whole budget and highlighted stuff, and I've got some questions just as clarification a lot of times. So maybe we can use those in between times to kind of, fill in the blanks for some general questions as well.
Or Sean, here's a suggestion. Maybe each department we could request they maybe pop in 10 or 15 minutes early. What do you think? So that in case we're moving along and we could just move into their section if that was how the timeline was going.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that seems fair, to a 10-minute before your start time to join the meeting.
Yes, to join us.
Yeah, right.
And that way it still gives a little bit of time for discussion too. So it's
right.
I like that.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions or comments from anybody?
What's for breakfast? No, I'm on.
Well, I can't deliver breakfast to everybody's house that morning, so I think we're all going to be on our own this year.
I think it's a good tentative schedule. And then, Joe, if you can just put the word out to maybe have those folks at those certain times show up 10 minutes before.
Yeah, I'd already expressed that to them in the department head meeting this morning. I said, if this schedule gets approved, I'd ask you to, I told them exactly what Rosie said, pop on a little bit early, just in case one group moves ahead a little bit,
Right.
Right.
So.
Right. And honestly, we should plan just a few minutes for a break somewhere.
That's true too.
Well, I'm looking at this now, realizing that, I have the first half hour and then there's another, 15 minutes for discussion or questions. I don't necessarily anticipate the presentation is going to take a half hour. So I could shorten up that and build in a 15-minute break somewhere around the 10:30 time frame, if you like. So
let's shorten that. I mean, I don't think that the presentation is going to be a half an hour, like you said.
No.
The question will take up more than the presentation when we kind of get into it.
Yep. So I'll do that. Then I'll rearrange this and forward it to you, and then we'll share it with the department head so that everybody knows. And then we'll use this as the basis for posting the meeting for both the FinCom and the Selectmen, unless the FinCom chairs have a different thing that they want to post. We'll use this as more or less the agenda, so that way there are people who want to watch at home. Maybe they have more interest in watching the discussion about public safety, public works, so they might know that they'll be on around 9:45, something like that.
Right. I think that's good. So we'll let you, Joe, circulate this back and adjust the times a little bit, and then we'll just kind of go for it. And then if there's anything John on FinCom has to add or wants to change, we can discuss it. But I think this is a pretty good tentative agenda.
Thank you.
All right, and then up last, we have the Conservation Commission proposal for the Patton Homestead property. We've talked a little bit about this when we opened the warrant. It was a possibility. Joe, you forwarded the email from Mark Johnson to everybody, I think, as well today.
Yeah, I forwarded that this morning as well. That was originally sent to you back in 2019 when the PHI had authored that. And again, this is not a new proposal. The commission had requested the Board of Selectmen to consider this back in the summer of 2019, and you kind of took the approach of, well, kind of waiting to see, and let's see if what's needed as far before making a decision. So the Conservation Commission has asked again that you review this proposal. I haven't had any discussion with the members to determine, what's put it back up on their radar, but it has been over a year, so it makes sense that they don't like to see us do something with it. And it, given that there's just anticipated to be much more activity out there with Incubate and whatnot, that might be something that just caught their attention and made them want to ask about this again. So, all of it perfectly understandable. So.
No, actually, this has not ever been on the back burner with the with members of the Concom. I think they have been talking about it for a while, so I don't think it's anything particular to what Incubate is proposing to do. Just my observation.
I didn't mean any disrespect. I apologize if it came across in that way. I hadn't heard from them myself in quite a while, so I didn't know what started it back up again. So.
Anybody have any comments? I don't know if everybody's looked at the email that Mark Johnson sent from PHI that was, I think, pretty much the last time we had started looking at this, and Conscom was thinking about bringing it to town meeting. Similar kind of comments. I don't know if the Incubate changes too much, if anything, with this, because they're really just using the building at the homestead. The only one that might affect it is the Project Adventure or other future things that we would want to do at the homestead that might involve some of this land.
I mean, that was my thought, was that if the town's going to own the land in perpetuity, of course you want to protect it. But if we have to do something else with it in order to be able to afford it, I don't want to handcuff ourselves or lower the property value of it. So
right, that's a concern that I have as well. Yeah,
how much of there's been a study to see how much the property value would be affected if we turn this into, it'd be interesting to see that, a study to see what, how the real estate might be affected in terms of dollars. We're trying to get them to do all this stuff and and then at the same time we're trying to limit them somehow. I don't want to put any limits on it until we sort of know what we're doing with the property. So unfortunately, these are not working together. These two things are not working together right now, in my mind.
Yep.
Well, also, I think the bottom line is you're talking about in terms of value of the land in terms of being taxed. Well, it's town owned, so it's not going to be taxed. And so the other part of that is, what do you want to do with the land, knowing that it's non-taxable? It is a community asset, and Conservation Commission, I'm sure they can speak for themselves. I'm merely the liaison, but I think it's a matter of protecting the land and having it used in a way that's advantageous to the citizens of the town, many of whom have expressed profound interest in conservation, open space, and this land here. There are a lot of wetlands. There already is some protected open space here. So the feeling of the Concom was to let's finish this package and make it complete so that it can be enjoyed by the public.
Right. I mean, I guess to your point, Rosie, and to Bill's point, I'm kind of in the middle, where I'd want to know if there is an effect that is detrimental on a resale value for the homestead if down the road things don't work out and we end up selling the property, if there's any impact for that. And then, I think a lot of the open space that's being proposed here to be in conservation is already protected wetlands and the like. My kind of interest is in that part that isn't in the wetlands and how much that would affect, doing things on the property for the town, and or if we sold the property. Those are my two kind of big concerns, I guess. You know,
So
it's
isn't,
already
is the,
conservation
is
or
the homestead proper, is that the house and 4 acres, or is it a lesser amount?
It could be whatever we want.
Well, I thought well, I guess I thought the homestead itself, the Patton homestead, was the house and 4 acres surrounding it. Now, I might be wrong about that. But I would think if we were going to sell anything, that was.
right. How much are we selling? Right. If
Right,
we sell, I'll have to look at the gift agreement again and
right,
maybe
right,
something that town council should look at as well.
exactly, right, exactly.
I don't know if, like you said, Rosie, if we're just talking the homestead and the acres surrounding the house adjacent is different from the whole property.
Right,
I-
yeah.
I also think if we do sell, and I'm probably just reiterating what you just said, the house should be sold separately on the smallest lot that we can get away with if we do have to do that, because the rest of the land should stay in our portfolio as an investment. And one other comment, you were concerned about detrimental use of the property. A couple of years ago, they had military maneuvers that were going on in the back. And boy, that tore up. They had tanks back there, at least one, that was racing around, tearing it up, made a real mess of the place. And I hope going forward, they limit that kind of activity, because I really think it could cause a lot of damage to the sensitive land.
I just want to jump in quickly. The organizers of Military Service Day, part of the agreement is that they bring the equipment that comes back after to replace any of the turf that gets disturbed. So we've limited where they are allowed to bring the tanks, and we've put it on property that is not next to the wetlands. And then they come with their backhoes over the next couple of days to replace any large clumps of turf that come up, so that it's not permanent damage. It's just the temporary for the day of.
Yeah, and to Kaylee's point there, the last time they did that, I was there that day and I came the next day after, and they were doing a really bang up job on replacing all the divots. And you knew things had gone on there, but they had done a really good job of leveling everything back out and putting it back to where it was.
That's good. Yeah.
Mark, go ahead.
I'll let the board finish its thing.
And so the other part is, should we ultimately decide, the other question, I guess, should we ultimately decide that we are unable to maintain ownership of it, of this property, and we decide that the gift agreement needs to be returned, what happens to any conservation restriction that we have on property? I don't know. That's another question.
That's actually pretty straightforward to answer. So the gift agreement allows for the property to be sold in whole or in part. So if you didn't sell open space that was retained by the town, the gift agreement sort of continues for the part that you retain. And there are rules about how to deal with the part that's been sold.
Okay, so all right. So if we were to sell the house and the 4 or whatever acreage is directly attributable to the house, then does it revert to the gift agreement in its original state, like X% goes to the family, X% goes to the town? Mark, do you know?
Yes. So the gift agreement envisions a first right of first offer, or right of first refusal, right of first offer back to the family, so that if the family chooses to repurchase it, they can. And if that doesn't happen and the town then sells it, the proceeds get split partially to the town to recover its interest, and then also some for charitable. There's a split to it, and the town doesn't get all. If you're sitting on a certain amount of value, the town doesn't get it all. It gets split either to the Patton family or to a charitable.
Okay, right. Okay.
So it's not quite that clear. There is no designation in the gift agreement for anything less than the full 27 acres. It was modified to allow the location of the the possible housing to be moved from the knoll behind the beech tree, behind the pond, over to the above the gravel hill.
Right, right,
So it was modified then because
Right.
the northwest quadrant was the wrong place because it was inside the 200-foot river zone. So that the gift agreement was modified, but that's the
Right.
only carve out in the gift agreement to a special treatment of a piece of land for the housing. So there is no theoretical 4-acre, 3-acre, 5-acre, 10-acre parcel that is tagged and delineated around the household. You do have to experience the house, and if you are experiencing the house, you will that great lawn is really part of the experience, and it would be very awkward to be looking out over the great lawn if it wasn't part of the house or controlled in perpetuity by the town in some way. So I want to encourage you not to try to parse the two pieces together until the last minute. Please think of them as one beautiful landscape looking out over the land. If I may, on the Conservation Commission, because I do have the memo stands alone. We did confirm with the Patent Homestead Board, PHI, the nonprofit, that our sentiments on this control of the land by the Conservation Commission are still valid. If we were to rewrite it today, we'd probably tweak it a little bit, but some of the concepts they want are no problems at all, right? If having a path that goes around it sounds lovely. There's nothing now constraining the path, any place to walk near the walls or not wall the walls. So there's sort of an interpretation that there's some limits that there aren't. If the town wants a path around it, we have to figure out how to cross over the swale or in front of the swale and how to make the loop. But it's entirely within our rights to do that. And to do that, the Conservation Commission doesn't need to own the property. We have many trails within Hamilton that are owned by Hamilton that the Conservation Commission doesn't own the property or own the restriction or put in a restriction to their benefit under it. So, and likewise, if the Conservation Commission felt it was worthwhile to remove invasive species and make a garden in the wetlands that was, featuring native species and whatnot, there's nothing preventing them from working with the town because the town owns the land. They don't need to own the land or control it to do that. Likewise, the town doesn't own Tobacco Lake, but Conservation Commission has lots of rules about it. They don't have to own Weaver Pond, but the town manages Weaver Pond with respect to conservation rules and their guides. So the important thing here is the Conservation Commission has been focusing a year and a half ago and now on owning it. And the real thing is, what do they want the town to do? Do they want it, is it the path? Is it the garden? Is it no use? If they can articulate what they want and everything is reasonable, the town can manage it because the town still owns it. The town can manage that property in conformance with whatever is rational that the Conservation Commission wants. The problem arises when the Conservation Commission has traditionally been a very protective no board that sort of says, don't do this in this 25-foot zone, don't do this in this 50-foot zone, don't do this in this 100-foot zone. And by the way, we're also, responsible for wetlands and riverlands and other boundaries. They at times are magnificently reasonable, and at times they are obstinate, and they don't meet all the time, and they don't have their own budget. So to the extent that that Kaylee needs to have there's a wedding or there's a festival or there's a partner and people want to have some trucks going back and forth, the fact that they have to go to Conservation Commission and say, let's come up with another plan, or here's this case, it slows Kaylee down, it interferes, and maybe maybe the heavy-handedness that we know Conservation Commission can use And it's all in our benefit when they do that, right? When they protect land, we all win, right? So the land wins, and that's kind of where we want to start. But they're not always timely. They're not always light, and they're not always nimble. And the fact is, the town will need to move. We'll have, if we're successful, there will be lots of things that the community is doing there, and the flexibility that the director needs is more important than the Conservation Commission's need to own what they are controlling. So if they can tell us what they want, or not us, if they can tell the town how we should manage it, how we should preserve the land, what management guidelines, what nitrogen levels not to put on place, and what pesticides to use, any of those things can be accommodated without them owning it. And to give you an example, the land between the drive for Patton Ridge and the parking lot is, half of it is the parking lot and the land around it that is directly clear to the town, free and clear. The other land is also free and clear to the town, but is under the conservation restriction that was part of the senior housing requirement for Patton Ridge. And so that land is in the control of the Conservation Commission. Well, that land, Conservation Commission said, can only be maintained mowed 3 times a year. Well, that land actually some years needs to be maintained a lot more than 3 times a year. You get very active wood growth, lots of, it can get tick laden, it can get, you can have trip and hazard falls through there. It really needs a management that is flexible. You don't need it as much in August, but you might need it quite heavy in March. But if they're only giving you 3 times when you can drive a lawnmower across it, you're in trouble. And for about 50 years, the Patton family maintained that as one open space field. The viewscape was unified. They use sometimes animals, sheep and horses to mow it. But when they didn't, in some seasons, they aggressively went in there and maintained the field-like behavior. And the Conservation Commission, rightly so, said we need a plan. They picked a number 3. The town's been working with that, but it really isn't necessarily the right number. And that number changes year to year. And that's an example of how the Conservation Commission can create some structure that is too confining.
But that depends, Mark, that depends on your view of the purpose of conservation. Those meadows are purposely allowed to grow so they can house habitat. They can house pollinators. I mean, perhaps somebody from a conservation perspective feels differently about the purpose of how many times a meadow is mown. And the other thing, sort of talking about the Conservation Commission wanting to own that land, it's town land, so the town will always own it. But what they're looking for is a conservation restriction, so that in perpetuity, that land will be used for a very defined set of purposes. And in the interest of conservation and in the environment, the Conservation Commission has a profound interest in that. And so I think when you say, well, maybe the Patton Homestead would need to use this property for blah, 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 well, maybe that's not the best use of it. And that's why the Conservation Commission is saying that we would like to have a conservation restriction on this property to limit the types of activities that are there. So it's a two-way discussion, and I'm sure that the Conservation Commission in the near future will come and talk about it in detail. But I think we should think about an open mind. And I personally had no problem with the Military Day. I thought it was a fabulous presentation of World War II artifacts and the tanks. I personally thought they were amazing. And if that's not going to hurt the property, it's not going to permanently damage anything, then I think that the Conservation Commission, knowing them as I do, would not have any negative opinion about that. So I think we need to be fair.
And I fully respect what you're saying. My sole point is that their influence and the things they want to get done can pretty much get done without them putting restrictions on the property that might cause some other issues. So they're not entirely, and we may find,
because the town owns the land. I mean, that's the whole point. The town owns the land right now, and so
and
we've asked a plan to be put together to make that property self-sustainable. And the first challenge was ADA, and they couldn't do anything because it wasn't ADA. So then they worked through that, and the next challenge was COVID. It's like we just keep putting roadblocks in front of them. So, in my opinion, is that I don't think we can put any more roadblocks until we figure out what we're doing with it. And then once we decide what to do with it, then maybe I'd be willing to look at a conservation restriction. But I just can't. I can't put a cart before the horse here. For me, we have to see what this is about before we decide to limit its uses. I mean, it's been the way it's been for hundreds of years. We're not planning on changing it, and the town owns it, so it's not going to drastically become a tennis court back there. I mean, that's not what the town's going to do.
Joe, is there? I know Conscom doesn't really have a budget. They get a little bit of money, but they give it to the school for field trips. And I can't remember where that comes from. Something from the state, I think.
Yeah.
But they had kind of zero budget at Mark's point. Is there things in this proposal that are going to cost the town money, but we'll be billing the Conscom, but we ultimately be billing ourselves for this?
Yeah.
Maybe some delineation and zoning costs and things like that initially, but.
I think, for instance, the existing Patton Ridge area that's already got a conservation restriction on it, there's an area where there isn't a house. It's not quite a lot size. It's got some trees and things on it. And the Conservation Commission worked with the ownership of the condo association to come up with a management plan for that piece of land because they didn't like the way the owners there were doing it. That's a great idea. It was a good use of their authority as Conservation Commission. Unfortunately, that plan costs about $10,000 to $15,000 a year to implement, and because the town owns it and not the condo association, I've left trying to help him find ways to manage that within the budget. It was negotiated without any input from the DPW or the town manager's office. That's one way. But that's something I think we can work through, and I think we can work through some of the other things. I think that there's a lot of really good things in the proposal put forward by Conscom, but I do have a couple concerns that I'd like to see us, discuss and talk about. And I'm also not convinced that we can't get to some of those things, as Mark said, but with a different kind of agreement, without doing a CR, but just having we can write up a formal agreement between the Patton Homestead and the Conservation Commission that, X, Y, and Z get done in this way in these parts of the land, as long as the town owns the property and manages it. Because, I also see that, the canoe launch and, reestablishing the walking path there and stuff. Those are things that once we have a finalized and adopted open space and recreation plan from the state, we can apply to the Department of Conservation and Recreation for a recreation trails grant or for park funds. And those are both good sources of funding to do those kinds of things. And they blend very well with what the Conservation Commission wants to do. They could be our partners in the application and make it a stronger joint application, and make it a stronger application with their input. I don't know why a CR is needed for the things the Conservation Commission wants to accomplish there. We own the land. We can agree to do what they want us to do with the land. I don't necessarily see why a CR is needed there, but happy to have them explain it to us if there's something I'm missing.
I guess I feel the same way. And to Mark's point and to your point, I've kind of thought it previously is, why can't we just do these things without bringing a warrant article and spending legal costs and surveying and all this stuff? We already own the property. If they just tell us or ask us to do certain things, I'm sure we'll be able to work with them. And then we wouldn't have to be robbing Peter to pay Paul with budgets and stuff like that. And we're expending more money than we need to on this.
To the other points raised by Bill and Mark and if we got to the point where, at some point down the road, we decide that the Patton Homestead as a municipal entity isn't able to be self-sustaining, that we need to make some other arrangement for the property. We could always make the right of first offer to the patents, and if they turn it down, then we can separate up the property and sell it and keep the portion we want to keep. I think that keeping the walking trails and the area around the canoe launch would probably make some sense for us, especially where it's so close to what the property the Greenbelt owns. And I don't think it would detract if we set it up specifically that way. The house in X number of acres would be something that we would be able to do if we needed to do that.
I don't think the right of first offer would be triggered by if you retained land and didn't sell it, and restricted it in some way. I don't think that would trigger the right of first offer.
Right. I was suggesting that if we made the decision that we wanted to sell the land, it doesn't mean we have to sell all of it. We'd have to offer to the patents all of it, and if they turned it down, and we were able at that point, we could separate it.
I think we'd
and
only
sell
have
it in
to
pieces.
offer, I think the correction there is I think we'd only have to offer them the land that we were looking to transfer. We wouldn't have to offer them the entire land.
Well, yeah. We'll have, that's a good point, Mark. We'll have KP Law take a look at that and make sure, because I think that would make it even easier. And then we can retain the portions of the property that have the most meaning for the most people in town. If we can't make it work, and I actually still have. I'm an optimist. You all know me. I've said it enough. I'm an optimist at heart, and I believe that the incubate plan could, together with what PHI and Kaylee have been trying to do. I really am bothered by what the pandemic did to Kaylee. I mean, she had people lined up. We were running. We were getting ready to run. We were jogging last spring, and we were all excited about it. And then everything just got shut down. I can't express how disappointed I am in that aspect of things. But the incubate plan is an opportunity to activate parts of the property that weren't envisioned to be used by us in this way in the past. So that could bring in a steady stream of income that would kind of give us a foundation and a base so that we can continue to pursue the other uses that people have talked about and programming the entire site. That would be great. I'm eager to get the open space and recreation plan finished so that we can pursue grant funds that would help us improve the walkway, the trail, and the canoe launch to the extent possible.
Joe, on that, I'll sign off because this is not my meeting, but the a last very important part with regard to conservation in this property is Essex Greenbelt, who is now in control of Green Meadows, has done a fabulous job making Vineyard Hill across the street accessible. It's much more, and the trails have been connected very nicely. Bradley Palmer. They still have to figure out how the use of the fields, the named fields, will be, and how much agriculture and active agriculture. But there are trails back there that connect to the property just past the pond. Mm-hmm. And really to really make this an important link in the larger conservation trail network should be one of our goals, not just making a very lovely loop around this property, but connecting it to the water side of Green Meadows all the way around, and connecting it across to Vineyard Hill, and those connections up. That would let people, I mean, you can even imagine people dropping off a kayak here and kayaking down, and then some people are hiking Bradley Palmer to pick up the car, and others driving back. I mean, you can really imagine the interspace being quite dynamic. And so the Conservation Commission is great for thinking this, but the connection for the open space and the trails and the opportunities are much larger if you just look just beyond the edges of the property, and the property already borders all that. And on that note, I'll call your attention to February 24th, next Wednesday night, the Patent Homestead Inc. It has a webinar that is hosted by the Ipswich River Watershed Association. They are the moderator. Trustees of reservations, David Santamena, Essex Greenbelt, Chris Lapointe from the Director of Land Conservation, as well as Christine Berry, who used to be part of the CPC, is Department of Conservation and Recreation. They are all talking about the future of open space on the North Shore. So really important players brought together by the Homestead. We will have the remit will be much more than the Homestead, but because the Homestead involved, it will be part of the conversation. So I encourage you and the audience to listen to it, to watch it, attend it, ask questions, and it's free, and it's next Wednesday. So with that,
Shameless plug.
Aimless plug.
I
I
was
am
just saying,
signing off.
it's free, just like the shameless plug you gave us.
Absolutely. Okay. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Mark. So on Mark's kind of parting shots there, I think, I think this is a good discussion. Now it's kind of some kind of next steps on what we can work with. I think kind of my takeaways and maybe next steps are kind of have KP Law look at the document if they haven't yet. Get us an opinion on that. Also, some type of, if there is a real estate or assessor's office kind of information that would give us some kind of over under on if the conservation restriction would affect the property value. And then the last part, and I think Mark raised a good point about Essex County Greenbelt. It owns most of that property around Homestead now. That the CONSCOM maybe starts some talk, or we start some talk with Essex County Greenbelt about making those trails across the property connect. We've talked about it for years that it's all part of that trail network in Hamilton, but making it kind of more official and working in a partnership with Greenbelt to connect their dock that's on the other side of the property with Vineyard Hill and all that stuff. And then the kind of last part is, do we really need to bring this as a warrant article? Can we work with CONSCOM to get their ask that they're looking for to accomplish with this? Can we work with them to do it without the warrant article and the added cost of legal and surveying and all that kind of stuff? Does that seem, did anybody else have any other takeaways or points for next steps?
No, I would just add that one of the reasons, and I'm purely speaking as the liaison to the CONCOM, one of the concerns is that we may all agree that this property is the best use of this particular area is open space, so that there can be connectivity between the Greenbelt trails and the canoe launch. But that doesn't mean that somebody coming down the road after us would feel the same way. And so I think that was one of the main motivations, that it would stay protected and be used for the intended purpose. But I agree, we should let the CONCOM defend this for themselves. Because I did not see anybody here from the CONCOM, I just thought I would offer my impressions of conversations with them.
I think that's a good point, Rosie. They're maybe thinking of it as more of a forever goal, and we're talking not we're talking right now, but we're talking about the town's best interests, and they're talking conservation's best interests, I guess. So.
Well, town, they think, I mean, because if you think about Greenbelt, they're not just for now. Well, that conservation restriction is in perpetuity, right? So they're thinking long term, and I think the CONCOM is just trying to think longer term. But I mean, certainly, perhaps there are solutions, and I hope there are, that makes everybody happy.
Anybody else? Any points or comments? No? Okay. Any new business that anybody has to bring up?
Any?
What was that, Darcy?
I said I can't think of any.
No. Well, I guess I'll do my usual. If you think of anything, please let me know, and we'll add it to an agenda. We can discuss it. Otherwise, I think, Darcy, it's that time of the evening.
I move that we adjourn the meeting for this evening.
Second.
All right, Bill seconded. We'll take a roll call vote. Start with Darcy since you motion.
Oh, did you? I couldn't quite hear you. Did you say my name?
I did. Please.
Okay, yes, Darcy Dale, aye.
All right, Bill.
Bill Olson, aye. Great meeting, great discussion, everybody. Thank you.
Jamie.
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
And myself, Sean Farrell, aye. Thank you, everybody that stuck through to the end. We appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.